Welcome to A Growing Concern. We're going to do a little update on the movement to get Oregon off of coal, the Beyond Coal campaign of the Oregon Sierra Club. First, we'll do a little update about what this is all about, why this needs to be done, and we're going to go into what the trajectory of what they're going to be doing in the future. We're going to get a phone call from Mike Scott, I believe, from Montana, who's working with the Sierra Club there, relative to the move to do something with all the coal ash, which is a real problem. There's going to be some meetings going on, put on by the government, but unfortunately they're not going to have any out here. But Mike will be able to fill us in on what's going on back there. I think it's in Denver. But we've got two guests tonight. I'm going to get it right. Sasha Kearns, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having us.
I think it's been about a year since you were here.
That's right.
And Robin Everett as well. Both have been working with this Beyond Coal campaign. We'll put up websites and things that you can check up further information as we go through the evening, I should say. And we've got a PowerPoint presentation that Robin's going to run and make this a little bit more visual for you. But so why do we need to not use coal? I mean, it's something that I was surprised a few years back when I found out that Oregon, despite killing, the Salado Falls and all the damage we do to the salmon with the Columbia River, we still use, 45% of our electricity comes from coal.
Pretty close to that. Yeah, it's a little less. It's about 41%. But I think most Oregonians are pretty surprised to hear that we get nearly 40% of our electricity from coal. A lot of folks think, most of it's hydro, which about the other largest chunk of our electricity mix is from hydropower. But coal is the other big part of it, and it's come as a surprise to a lot of folks, given that we're really, try to be clean and green in Oregon. But King Coal still has his grip on the Northwest, and we're trying to break free of that here through the campaign. But some of the big problems associated with coal are really rooted in our health, and they emit, when you burn coal, it emits a lot of terrible air toxins. But in the grave, coal is also a problem. So the destructive impacts of mining take it out of the ground. Then when you burn it, you get, of course, huge amounts of carbon dioxide. Boardman emits about 5 million tons a year. And so it's the largest global warming polluter in the state. And that comes along with a lot of mercury and sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides, poisons that cause problems like cardiovascular illnesses, things like heart disease, respiratory illnesses like asthma, and then at the tail end of it you have the coal ash, which Robin's going to talk about later, and some of the impacts that come from the leftovers from burning coal. So this is a pretty serious issue for us, not only because we're concerned about global warming, but because of all of the associated health impacts and what it does to the places we love. Boardman is a big issue for us because it causes haze in the gorge, and it's the largest polluter in the state.
So just to clarify, Boardman is Oregon's only coal plant. Owned by Portland General Electric, and so it helps make up some of that 41%. In fact, I have a picture of Boardman up if you wanted to see it. But we do get coal power from other states like Montana and Utah, and it's imported in over the lines. But Boardman is our coal plant.
It's the only one in the state.
The only one in the state. Well, I see we have a PowerPoint here, a photograph that gives you a nice pie graph of looks like where some of the electricity comes from. Is that what that is? Oh, okay.
It's a little old. The Oregon Department of Energy has yet to update their website with a new pie chart. And so that wind and geothermal slice, it says it's at 1%. It's risen, and we have been making some strides, but it's still at about 4%. So we have a long way to go.
Right. You were saying and we're talking about Boardman, but want to get too far off the subject. But this Beyond Coal campaign isn't just Oregon. This is a national campaign of the Sierra Club.
National. And swiftly becoming international as well. So.
International. So that's a point I never thought of. Is coal-powered, coal electric-powered plants being used in other parts of the world?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, and they're growing. And one of the unfortunate things is that the U.S. is, some of our taxpayer dollars are actually going to fund some of these projects in other countries that want to build new plants. So we have a lot of work to do here at home, and we're starting with the Northwest in this case, and we'll be talking about that tonight. But there are ways that we can impact what's happening in other parts of the world through how we do things at home.
I'm curious, and I know a lot of times some of these things that are for the environment and for people are being done in countries that are very poor, and there's an aspect of environmental racism. Is that part of what's going on here?
Well, we can certainly see a pattern when it comes to using coal-fired power, how certain communities are affected disproportionately by that. Oftentimes, low-income communities maybe don't have the resources to oppose certain projects or to get the kind of response that they need to respond to things like the TVA disaster when billions of tons of toxic sludge were dumped into communities. And we see some of that with the coal ash situation, but also you look at the air emissions and access to health care, and we see some communities being impacted more than others based on income and based on race.
Yeah. Mining in Appalachia is a real strong example of that as well.
Yeah, that reminds me, I sent you an email about a presentation being done by some folks about the mountain top removal. I don't know if you got that or not, but just as an aside real quickly, if folks go to Portland Indie Media, there's a group in town, they're going to be talking about mountain top removal. That is, to me, it seems like one of the most egregious aspects of this, where they just plow off the top of mountains and not only do that, but drop it into the valleys. And that's whole part of the power of King Coal.
That's right. And we'll be hearing about I'm not sure exactly what Mike's going to talk about, but a little bit he might mention one of the big things that he's involved in is preventing new mining from the Powder River Basin in Montana and Wyoming, where that's where we get most of our coal from. So the mountaintop removal mining is really egregious and terrible, but we've got our coal coming from destructive mining in the west as well. And
that's in Montana and Wyoming.
Yeah, and the guys out there like to describe it as you're making mountains instead of blowing off the tops. You're digging and then making mountains.
In a couple million
so it's
years,
almost the exact opposite.
Something might grow in a couple million years on it. So
yeah, so you have West Virginia starting to look as flat as Montana, and Montana looking like Virginia, and it doesn't look good in either case.
No, and then so you're talking about all the toxics that are coming from this.
Yeah.
So you have a few more slides there. We can talk a little bit about this is just kind of bringing us up to date of where we're at right now.
That's right. So the last time we saw you, we had just started this campaign, and it was a lot of education, like we had just mentioned. A lot of people didn't know that we get a lot of our power from coal, and so Sasha and I had our work cut out with us just telling people about it, and we were able to form a group of volunteers. These are all volunteers who work so hard on this campaign. And they're the ones that are giving PGE a run for their money. And so with their help, we have participated in a number of different activities throughout the year.
Yeah, we're basically trying to influence in every possible venue we can that it's time to move off coal in Oregon and influence decision makers at all levels to put us on that path toward the clean energy future by moving off coal at Boardman first, and this unique opportunity we have in time to move off coal at Boardman and then eventually through the region. And one of the big exciting regional things that we worked on last year was through the Northwest Power and Conservation Council. And that's a regional entity that makes decisions about how the Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Montana, and Idaho, how their power is planned for the future. And they were putting together their 6th power plan, which is, they only do this every 5 years. So this was a big opportunity last year to influence what our plan for the Northwest is going to look like. And it's a 20-year outlook. So they do that plan every 5 years for a 20-year projection of what the region is going to be using their energy from. And so there were hearings throughout the region on it, and Oregonians showed up in force to talk about what they want to see come out of their clean energy future, and we got some pretty great things out of that plan. The Power Council really listened to people, and one of the most noteworthy outcomes of the plan is a determination that we can get over 85% of our future energy needs just from energy efficiency, so just from the electricity that we're not using. By being better about how we're using our electricity, we can get more of our future needs met by being just more careful about how we use it. So that's really helpful in showing that we really don't need coal to be part of this picture, and they also showed that we don't need to actually build another coal plant in the region for future power needs as well. So it was pretty exciting. People, it's true that they wouldn't have maybe made that determination without all that involvement.
People say, well, what good does it do? Well, it does a lot of good, if you show up. I mean, and what 90% of it all is showing up, they say, and I don't know who said that, Nader or somebody, but but it's definitely true.
It's so true. The commissioners that were on this board, to make these decisions, they're not used to seeing anybody show up at these meetings. They're lucky if 5 people show up. So when 150 people show up, they're paying attention, and they know that business as usual isn't going to work under the Public scrutiny.
Especially if they show up and they're not, it's not a situation where they're showing up for their own, I wouldn't say selfish, because they get jobs or something from it. If they're showing up because they're concerned about the future of the planet or whatever, that's different than showing up because you want a job or whatever.
Which we're all for creating jobs.
That
and there's
too.
a lot, we'll talk about that later. There's a lot of potential in the economic opportunities and clean energy.
And so we kept rolling with making sure that we were watching all these agencies as they were making decisions. And one of the things that came up was the Department of Environmental Quality was looking at renewing PGE's pollution permit. And that's basically what it is. It's called an acid rain permit, and it's how much toxics they're allowed to spew that cause acid rain in Oregon. And the idea that there's such a thing as a toxic rain permit sounds terrible to begin with, but they were holding public hearings, and so we made sure over 200 people came out and asked the DEQ to hold PGE to the highest possible standards. That still remains to be seen how that will work out in the end, but we were there watching to let the DEQ know that we are tired of this plant polluting our state.
And the DEQ sets the standards, but who takes the measurements?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do we allow on these folks to measure their pollution themselves, or does the DEQ monitor that?
No, DEQ does the monitoring.
And they work with the EPA. They're the state extension of the EPA.
Oh, good. That's good to hear.
That's right. So we have had some other exciting ways that we've demonstrated power this year, thanks to all of the public involvement. And one of the most recent ways that we've done that was through a hearing at the Public Utility Commission. And this was in June. Of course, all the pressure was building around what's going to happen with Boardman and how long is the plant going to be operating. What does the future look like for Boardman? And over 400 people came out to the public hearing in Portland in June to talk to the Utility Commission. Oh, well, we missed you, Jim. But don't worry, there were 399, 400 of your friends there. And everyone was in agreement that it wasn't really a matter of if we should be phasing out the Boardman plant, but when. And so there was a lot of different opinions about which date was there, but everybody that spoke talked about how it was time for us to move on from Boardman, but when and how that happens was the topic in question. And there was a real sense of urgency expressed at the hearing, I think, and the Public Utility Commission was impressed with how many people are engaged with this, and I think it's just a clear demonstration that people know it's time. It's time to move away from coal, and our decision makers are hearing that, and we need to make sure that when they make their final decision, that they're going to take all that into account.
Right. Now, how do people hear about this that show up? I mean, obviously, you're working really hard to get the word out there. Is the mainstream media covering this, talking about it much?
Not as much as we would like.
Well, they never do.
Yeah, so true.
More.
Maybe if somebody got killed at it, they would have covered it.
That's true.
There's been some interesting dialogue around it. And we did, especially for this hearing, there was 2 TV stations did show up. I think it was Quinn 6 and KGW to do coverage of it.
Yes, that's right.
And there's definitely been a pulse in the Oregonian and in the Mercury. I know PB's covered some of it too, so I think there's a lot of questions being raised about where we go, and we want to make sure we keep up that public discourse as strong as possible.
I'm always curious about that, because when you get 400 people showing up, that's not a typical reaction to public meetings at all, unless it's maybe police accountability downtown at city council or something. Very, very few issues will bring that many people out there.
Yeah,
and it's good to see.
I think energy is becoming increasingly the topic that concerns most people, most young people. That's what's been so neat about this, is that the youth presence in these hearings has just been incredible. And that's not my next slide. I thought it would be my next slide, but it's not. But this is us celebrating our victories. We like to have fun. We wanted to show those. We've been having a good time.
We work hard and play hard. And we've had a lot of other great events going on.
I remember that rally, right?
That's right, you were there, yeah.
That's when the Native American man and his wife were there speaking about what was going on in Montana, and a rancher from Wyoming as well.
Those are some of the leaders that Mike Scott, who we'll have on later, has been working with. So it's great to have that connection to talk about all of the impacts that we have.
And you mentioned youth, and you were showing all the different volunteers, and there was just you were down there the other day when the youth, the high school or college, I guess it was high school and college both, had a little art thing downtown where they did a drawing and they presented it to the windows at PGE because they wouldn't let anybody in. But at the same time, there was a strong movement of youth that are moving in that direction.
It's been amazing. It's been amazing, and in fact, we've been working really closely with some key youth leaders, and they worked really hard throughout last semester and got 10 colleges, the student body governments, to sign petitions to the PUC calling for the early closure of the Boardman coal plant, and so that was really exciting. Then they had representatives from all their campuses come to the PUC meeting. So that meeting that we showed the crowd at, I mean, it was easily a third of them was under 25. It's pretty cool.
Well, they're going to inherit the earth, so they have in some ways a larger stake in that than we do.
I think so. Yeah,
that's what we're hearing.
All right, sure we've got more of these.
And so sometimes we stray off the beaten path, and
well, King Coal and King Oil, they're very much the same players.
Yeah, BP gave us a pretty good reason to take a few days off of coal and focus on them, and so this was a protest we had out on Burnside, and we had Greenpeace and Climate Solutions and Environment Oregon and us out there, making sure people knew what was going on. And nationally, the Sierra Club's work continues every day to end our dependence on oil and to get us off of oil by 2030.
You mentioned Greenpeace, and I saw in the news the other day that Greenpeace was complaining to, what was it, Google or Facebook or somebody like that was building an enormous, incredibly large building somewhere out in Pendleton or something like that, and they were going to be using power from I think Boardman or something.
Pacific Power.
Pacific Power, that was it, right?
Is the producer for there, and Pacific Power relies heavily on coal. 58% of their energy mix comes from coal. They have actually worked really hard to decrease over the past 5 years or so. They've done dramatic improvements, but still we're at 58% is still a whole lot. The issue with that though is none of us really have a choice where our power comes from. I mean, even if a business came in Portland, they're going to get 40% of their energy from coal. So I mean, how do you choose? How do you,
right.
You know what I mean?
They don't have a choice.
The business, you're going to have to be reliant on coal. There's no choice.
Well, so Greenpeace was just using this as something just to mark the spot to say,
Well, it's an illustration of how we need to be paying attention to where electricity is coming from, and that large businesses do have a choice in how they can, kind of weigh in about how they want their business to operate. And we've seen some entities in Oregon. Intel is doing a lot to try to become more energy independent. They've done a lot to build solar powers build solar panels at a lot of their sites. We can see how larger businesses are making choices, and we had a number of local Portland businesses sign petitions to the PUC with us saying, I'm a business leader, I care about where my electricity comes from, I'm a large customer of PGE, I pay a lot of money for my electricity, and I want it to come from cleaner sources. So it's a good example of how folks who are business leaders can weigh in and say that they want to see something different too.
Right, and there's also where the business sites their factory. They could site it in a place that has access to greener energy than a site that doesn't as well. And I think that might have been part of what Greenpeace was saying.
Yeah,
but they still are subject to whoever their power provider is. So,
right. And I mean, Facebook says that they picked the site because it's a cooler spot where they wouldn't have to run as much air conditioning to keep their servers cold. So, you go back and forth on it. And these are hard decisions, and, we're not left with a lot of great choices.
But the whole thing is to make these choices consciously and realize that you do have these choices to make.
That's right, and have a public discourse. And like Sasha says, I mean, the big businesses, they're the ones that have real leverage to make a change. And so we've also spent some time threatening some of the threatened places from coal. So, we think about coal and we think about global warming and health impacts and whatnot. The acid rain, though, that comes from the coal plant is destroying the Native American petroglyphs that are out in the gorge. I mean, these things have been around for 1,000 years, maybe more.
Is this so caustic in here?
That's right, and it's eroding away the pictures in the rocks. And then also our gorge is under threat from acid rain as the acidity level rises. Plants and animals don't do as well. Additionally, the plant produces a lot of haze, and so we don't get to have our beautiful views as much as we could. And so we have led a lot of trips out to show people, you know, this is what we're working to save. And
we've also seen the source of the matter itself. PGE was very gracious about our request to check out the plant, and we had been offered from PGE, from one of their staff people, they said, well, you should come and see the Bigelow Wind Farm and see what we're doing on wind. We said, oh, that'd be great. We'd love to do that. We'd also like to tour the Boardman plant. And
is the wind farm at the Boardman plant?
It's not at the same site, but it's on the way. So it's about an hour drive from Boardman itself. And PGE did sweeten the deal and gave us a pretty interesting day. We stopped at the Boardman plant first, and then we toured the Coyote Springs gas plant and then their wind farm. And so we got a really good contrast of all these different kinds of energy sources with the leaders that we brought with us, and had a chance to really kind of talk about what our choices are, and see that each other is human, and we can have a respectful conversation about where we're going with this.
Well, it doesn't go anywhere if you're not respectful of each other.
This
No,
is true.
it's true.
This is true.
One of the most interesting things I found out on the tour, when this is us standing up on top of the Boardman plant, and as you look over the edge, you can see the coal trains coming in, the trains bringing in all the coal, and they're hugely long. I mean, they're far, you can't even see the back end from the front end.
I forget how many tons you mentioned
Yeah,
at one time.
the plant manager, I said, how many of these trains come in? And he said, well, we burn about 300 tons an hour, about 2.5 million tons a year. So about 200 trains. I was like, wow. A lot of coal.
And those trains could be carrying wind turbine blades out to the gorge instead, or all kinds of other things, right?
Sure.
So.
And so this is what you were talking about.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I knew you
That's it finished.
I seen you had a camera there. So yeah, that was Nick, right?
That's right, Nick and the students. And so this was a number of different campuses were represented here. I believe Linfield campus and McMinnville and Pacific University and
Southern Oregon University.
Southern Oregon University as well. And so we came out, it was a hot day, and painted that mural. We didn't think we were going to get it finished.
That's right, but it did, and they did a good job.
You and I were taking bets on that.
But they did get it finished, and they did walk it over and stand on the sidewalk in front of PGE.
That's right. And this was completely student run. I mean, I was there, but I just, chipped in with a paintbrush. I mean, they did this whole thing themselves, and they've just been, it's been phenomenal to watch and inspiring to see how they've really taken charge of their own future and gotten involved in the process.
Well, eventually I'll have that video worked up. I did an interview with Nick and shot some video of them doing the painting, and we'll work up a little piece for a show in the future and send you a link to that as well.
That'd be great. And so now I think, it's a good time to talk about where we're at in the fight. When we came to you last year, we were talking about how PGE wants to burn coal until 2040 at the Boardman coal plant, and that we needed a new way of thinking and a new change. And the work that we've been doing that we've just highlighted has pushed PGE, and PGE came out earlier this year with a 2020 plan. And they said, okay, no longer are we going to burn coal till 2040. We'll ditch that plan if you let us burn coal dirty for another 10 years until 2020, and you don't make us do any of the cleanups that we're supposed to be doing. And of course, that was a very significant string to this plan that wasn't getting a whole lot of traction in the public eye. But the fact is that yes, they were trying to close down in 2020, but they were trying to evade a series of pollution control laws in order to do it. So this plant has been running since 1980 without modern day pollution controls on it, and it is in desperate need of controls for nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, and mercury, which are all very bad harmful gases to our health and the planet. And so the Department of Environmental Quality has told them that over a series of years they need to put on these pollution controls. And those years are 2012, 2014, and 2017. Those are the benchmarks for a series of pollution controls. And so PGE said, okay, we'll do the first ones, we'll put on the mercury controls, and we'll put on some small controls for nitrogen oxide, but we don't want to do the full suite for nitrogen oxide, and we don't want to do anything for sulfur dioxide. And in exchange, we'll close down in 2020. And so Sierra Club warned against that because that's not good for our health, that's not good for our environment, that's not a proper timetable. And PGE went forward though, and they put this proposal to the Department of Environmental Quality. And last month the Department of Environmental Quality said, sorry, the EPA there's no way they're going to approve this. You have been polluting for 30 years. You can't pollute another 10 years. You either need to shut it down early or clean it up. And so the DEQ offered 3 options, one of them which is a shutdown in 2015, which would be really great and is something that the Sierra Club is very supportive of. PGE's own plans show that it can be done, and the DEQ has said it can be done, and so we really think that that's the best option. PGE has not liked anything the DEQ has put forth. They don't like any of the options. They want to continue blindly with their option that the EPA has already said they won't approve. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. It's an interesting position to be in. You know, they're still blindly going forward with this. We don't know how they plan to get approval for it. And in the background of all of this,
2040 is not off the table. So there's PGE still could say, all right, you know what, we've had enough of this and we're just going to keep operating the plant until 2040 like we originally said we would. Fine, we'll sink all of that money into an aging, dirty coal-fired power plant and take the risk that we might have to shut the plant down sooner because of other regulations that are coming down. PGE still has a lot of other obstacles. We are seeing the coal ash regulations coming up that we're going to hear about in a minute. There's still, you know, a possibility that we will see carbon regulation come down in the next few years.
Certainly before 2040.
Right, certainly before 2040. Yes, yes. So we'll, you know, ideally we see some carbon regulation happening, but I think that there's an accepted, already companies are accounting for the cost of carbon in their modeling, so they know that it's a really strong possibility, that it's a serious economic factor, and the thought of subjecting ratepayers and shareholders to the risk of running the plant till 2040 is really ridiculous. But you know, it also, PGE thinks that they could still maybe get away with all of the other regulations that they've managed to avoid and skirt around for all this time. So we want to remind folks that we have an opportunity now when it's not just a Sierra Club and some of our supporters saying that we need to shut the plant down early. We're hearing from the DEQ that it's possible. We can do this. We can keep our air quality. We can improve our air quality and transition the plant by 2015. We're not a lone wolf about this anymore, and it's time to make sure that we hold our decision makers to that opportunity.
It would seem to me that as long as that plant is running, they lose some of their momentum or some of their incentive to invest R&R into sustainable methods.
That's right. We're going to be left behind a little bit, and you know there's so many opportunities in investing in renewable energy technology. We have a lot of new businesses cropping up in Oregon, and PGE might be is going to be left behind in that, and we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of every opportunity we can to move into that future that is going to put the U.S. at an economic advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent point, is that coal is stopping the new green energy future. It is completely not completely stopping it, but it is a real big hamper on it. And like Seisha said, we're getting all this great business on wind and solar, and it's still not even making 5% of our electricity. And we can do so much more, but coal is a hindrance to that.
Yeah, I know you hear a lot about that, and the liquefied natural gas was somewhat the same thing. It's still unsustainable,
that's right.
Source, and it was not a bridge fuel. It was a bridge fuel to the past, not the future.
Yeah.
And that's the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the end of this part. So we're just pretty good time. We got about a minute or so. Hopefully, Michael will be calling in here.
I did want to. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, though, that we are seeing some really great job growth coming out of renewable energy here in Oregon. It's really exciting, and of course now I got to get my notes because I don't remember. So Solar World, they just announced that they're going to have expansions of their manufacturing in Hillsboro.
Who was it?
Solar World. They're a solar cell manufacturer, and they plan to have up to 1,000 employees by 2011. So within a year.
That's just a few months away.
I know.
Yeah.
Celestant, it's a new firm in Gresham that does solar film manufacturing, and they're going to have 170 initial jobs when they come up online, but they have expansion plans that will lead to almost 1,000 jobs there as well. Vestas, I was just on the news that they're having new buildings in Portland, and they currently employ 400 people here in Portland, and they're going to add 200 more with these new expansions. And then just in the news today, a company called Revolt that makes electric car batteries and the technology for it, they just announced that they're moving their American headquarters to Portland, and they're going to have 150 jobs by 2015. So we are getting great opportunities here, and we need to keep investing in this because it's going to put Oregon back to work.
And apparently there's a lot of folks, at least 400 of them that showed up at this public hearing the other day that they may not be aware of the details of it, but they are aware that this is some momentum is going in that direction. Anyway.
That's right. And this is the new future. We're going to get left behind if we don't take advantage of the opportunity right now. These companies want to move to Oregon because of our reputation for being so clean and so green, and because we're, we value this, and so we need to keep making sure that door's open to them, and the way that we can open it even further is by getting off of our dirty fossil fuels.
And we have wind and we have sun. We need to figure out how to make electricity from rain. We'd have it made. We'd be in like Flynn on that one.
Those old water wheels.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing some of the technology for tidal energy starting to be developed a little bit more. I mean, it's a ways off, but we still we shouldn't limit ourselves. Let's not buy into a sense of scarcity around what the possibilities are, and put Oregon back at a competitive advantage in the economy.
Well, we have a lot of things going for us here, and right now we're kind of waiting for that phone call. Hopefully Mike calls in. You said to call in around.
Well, what if I just talk about the DEQ for a second, and then you can give the coal ash overview?
Sure.
So we just want to remind people that the next big thing on the horizon is the Department of Environmental Quality is going to be holding hearings in September about what we do with Boardman and the options that Robin talked about that they've put forth, a couple different ways that PGE can look at the future of Boardman, and the 2015 transition date that also takes care of cleaning up some of the air emissions there is of course the one that we're looking at pushing for. And they have some other options on the table right now, but this is the chance for everyone to come out to the Department of Environmental Quality hearing and speak up and say, the sooner the better. And the sooner we can transition from this dirty plant, the better off Oregon's going to be. And let's not let PGE drag their heels anymore. Let's get this thing wrapped up. So on September 21st, mark your calendars.
Right, I'll mention that.
Come out.
I'll mention, we've got it up on the graphic here too, though.
Yes.
We can put that graphic up, and maybe they already had it up. I didn't notice it, but so that's right there at the
Metro Regional Council
right
chambers.
at the Equinox.
Not
there.
far from here.
Yes,
Right.
you make your Equinox plans. Be speaking up for a clean energy future.
All right, and we'll maybe get that up towards the end of the program as well, and I'll have time to mention that again in another program, at least just to remind folks that that's what's going on. But I understand that we have a phone call. We'll flip that phone call up there. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you. Is this Mike?
Yeah, this is.
All right, Mike. Pleased to meet you. My name's Jim, and Seisha and Robin are here.
Hey, Mike.
Hello, Robin. Hello, Seisha.
All right. We've got a picture of you here with your dog. Is that your dog there?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Oh, that's one of them. I got a couple myself, so I can understand how you can get more than one dog. But you're living in Montana, and you want to talk about the situation with the coal ash?
That's correct. Yeah, we have Yeah, are you guys hearing the echo that I'm hearing?
We're not.
Tell you what, hold on one second here.
Okay, you got a TV that's on or anything?
I've got a computer that's on.
I don't know if that would be doing it, but...
Let me try unhooking this headset.
all right, sure.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
No, I'm still getting the echo, but that's okay.
All right, well, a lot hopefully it isn't going out on the air, so...
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk just briefly about the issue we have with coal ash here in Montana, because it does affect, or it is affected, I guess, by the energy demand coming from the Pacific Northwest. We have a power plant here called Colstrip. It's in the community of Colstrip, which basically exists because of the power plant and the coal mining. But the plant itself has leaking ash ponds, and the ash ponds are contaminating the water in the community, making it undrinkable, also contaminating several ranches just south of Colstrip. And the plume itself is just continuing to spread. And that it provides an example of what's going on nationally with coal ash. This is a huge problem that we have all over the country. And right now the EPA is looking at changing how they regulate coal ash. And what we need is the support from energy consumers who are, turning on the lights every day to demand that the coal companies actually address this issue of coal ash, and if they won't, make the EPA do it.
By regulate, you probably mean store, I would suppose, mainly.
Say that again?
By regulate, you probably mean mostly how they're going to store it.
That's correct, yeah. And right now, your household garbage is more regulated as to how that's going to be stored finally than coal ash is.
And I just want to
that's something that a lot of people find shocking. It's very true.
I just want to interject for those listeners and watchers who may not know what coal ash is. Coal ash is the byproduct of burning coal. And so if you think about burning wood in your fireplace and you're left over with ash, it's very similar kind of concept, except for this ash is highly toxic, full of heavy metals. And then they store it in, big ponds because it blows away. So if you try blowing it away, which Mike can talk about, it blows all over for them, and that causes respiratory disease and other ailments. And so to try and fix that, then they put water on it to keep it damped down, but then it seeps into the groundwater and poisons groundwater. And so it could be very, very, very bad if it's not properly disposed of and stored. And we see across the country that it's not at all.
Well, Mike, besides the coal ash, there's also a lot of problems, I think, in that area with the actual mining of it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We actually across the board, Montana has a coal problem. The power generation, the coal mining, and where we get our power. We have a governor who is very supportive of developing and burning coal, while at the same time he acknowledges that climate change is happening, but doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. But yeah, right now we have, I think, 6 or 7 active coal mines. And just to give you an idea, the coal mines in Montana are approximately 25,000 acres. That's kind of your average coal mine. That's 40 square miles. So if you can imagine a hole in the ground for 40 square miles, that's what we're talking about here. The coal seams themselves, the formations of coal under the ground also act as the aquifers, and that's where the groundwater is stored, which is why when you develop coal, you oftentimes impact our rivers, streams, and springs. Now, that wouldn't be as important if these coal mines weren't in areas that got somewhere around 11 inches of precipitation a year. So we're absolutely dependent on the groundwater around here. And when you cut those seams, you cut off the water.
I was thinking while you were talking that Montana has a history of other mining besides coal that has caused a lot of degradation of the environment over the last 150 years as well. So that's added to this is adding to the top of that as well.
Yeah, and it's in Montana. It's been in western Montana and the more mountainous regions. We've had hard rock mining that's, contaminated streams, destroyed drinking water sources, and of course killed a lot of wildlife. And then in the eastern part of the state, we have a lot of coal development. So.
There was some folks that came out here a while back that were talking about, I think the BLM were wanting to open up another coal operation there. What was it?
Otter Tail.
Oh, that was the Otter Creek track.
Otter Creek, that's
Otter
right.
Creek, right. And did the BLM succeed in getting that expanded?
Well, that was actually the state.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was the state government, and they did actually, even though it was the most commented on decision that our state land board has ever made, and they received more comments in opposition to this project than they've received on anything, they did decide to go ahead with it, and they leased out the coal tracks there. So now we're looking at the possibility of a mine. It would be probably the largest mine in Montana. There's 1.3 billion tons of coal there. And so we're doing everything we can to stop that. But Otter Creek is not the only one we have proposed. We actually have, we have 6 other proposed mines right within 200 miles of where I live.
Where exactly is that where you live now in the state?
Billings, Montana.
So that would be in the eastern part of the state?
South Central.
South Central?
I guess I would call it.
All right, for those who are geographically challenged about Montana, like myself.
Billings is kind of the gateway to what's considered eastern Montana. We're very close to Yellowstone National Park.
Oh, okay. All right, that brings it into focus there. Well, so we kind of got off a little bit, but I did want to give folks an idea that, this mining that is going on, the only reason they mine it is because it is shipped out and it is burned to make electricity for the most part. And so that's where from what Robin and Sasha were saying, the coal that the PGE uses at Boardman is coming from the area that you're talking about right there.
Yeah, a lot of it's coming from Montana and Wyoming.
And so we do have a stake in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to emphasize we do have a stake in what's going on over there, and from what you're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah, and actually, we all are affected by mining in this region, and we don't really realize it because so much attention is paid to coal mining in Appalachia.
Right.
But what a lot of people don't realize is that the Powder River Basin actually provides about 40% of the coal that's burned in this country.
That's quite a bit of chunk.
It's considerably more, but it gets a lot less attention here.
And as we were talking about, digging it out of the ground is one issue, but as you were leading off when you first called, the burning of it creates an incredible problem. And even though the federal government is allowing this to go on, they are holding some public meetings having to do with what to do with this coal ash.
They are. Right now, we're just kicking off a round of public hearings across the country to start taking public comments on how coal ash is actually stored. So, right now I've been getting a whole bunch of people from Montana to get ready to go down to Denver, which is the closest place that we can go to talk to the EPA about what's been happening here. So a lot of citizens are going from Coal Strip, Montana, where they've been drinking contaminated water for 20 years, and they're going to be telling the EPA exactly what they think should happen.
Now, you don't have to live in that area. Is the EPA providing ability for folks to write or email to weigh in on this?
Yeah, there's certainly ways to provide comments without going to the hearings. One good way is to get in touch with Sierra Club organizers wherever you are.
We have a graphic for that right now.
Comments.
Come see us.
Right, we got a graphic we can put up.
And Robin. But you can also go to the EPA's website, I believe.
And Sierra Club has their own website. for coal ash. And so you could go to sierraclub.org/coal ash, and you'll find a way to comment to the EPA. You'll also find out about coal ash in your area. There are links to reports, fact sheets. I mean, anything you want to know about coal ash, you can find on that site.
Well, I don't know if either one of you two or Mike can answer this. So it's the burning of the coal that creates the coal ash. What do they do with the coal ash around here? Is it shipped somewhere else, or?
So PGE uses the majority of their coal ash to make cement, which is considered a beneficial use. So they put it in cement, and it helps, make cement easier and actually reduces greenhouse gases for cement making. So it's, pretty good deal. But they haven't always done that, and they still have that 7% sits in a pond out in Boardman. And the Sierra Club just released a report yesterday that highlights I think 31 new hazardous sites for coal ash that are currently on the EPA's list, and Boardman made the list because they are seeing effects of leaking into the groundwater, and there are a number of private wells in the area, and also a nearby farming operation that uses that water for irrigation in their farm. And so one of the things that the report really highlighted was the fact that proper monitoring is not happening at the Boardman site. They have wells dug out there. Many of the wells are too dry to monitor, and they're not close enough to the site to monitor well, and they're also not monitoring for a lot of heavy metals that we feel should be monitored. And so this really highlights the need for a federally enforceable standard from the EPA. Right now, it's just a patchwork of state laws. Some states don't have any laws to monitor it. Most of them are very loose if they do. And what we need is a federally enforceable standard, and that's what we're talking about, what the EPA is proposing, and that's what we need to support.
Well, so Mike, you were able to hear that. What exactly, what kind of commentary are you going to be giving when you go to Denver?
Well, when I go down there, I'm going to be telling the EPA that despite what our state is telling them, they're not doing their job.
All right.
In Montana, the state has essentially looked the other way on all issues that regard coal ash. They have allowed the ash ponds to leak in coal strips for 20 years. No, I take that back, 30 years. For 30 years, those ash ponds have been leaking. They started leaking 3 years after they were built. And the state has done nothing to protect that community.
Right.
Here in Billings, we have a coal-fired power plant that discharges the water from its ash ponds into the Yellowstone River.
Oh my gosh.
One of the iconic rivers of the United States. Our state says they can handle this. They clearly can't.
Right.
Well, I don't think the people living downriver would agree with that.
Right.
That's right.
That's very true.
Very true. Well, it would seem to me that this coal ash in some ways, poses as great a problem as that which is going up in the air. Apparently it's probably the same pollutants are in both. When it's burned, all of it isn't burned off up into the air. Some of it goes into the coal ash. And you're talking about Montana, and is this something that's going on in other parts of the country? Because I'm sure that these places are, I should say, these plants are also being burned other places as well.
Yeah, that's very true. And Montana is just one small example of the problem that we have with coal ash. And really this all gets down to the bottom line, which is coal can't be clean. One of the biggest things that has caused our large problem with coal ash was actually emissions controls that were passed decades ago. When you just alluded to it when you said the stuff that's going up into the air is the same stuff that's ending up in the coal ash. A lot of what's considered coal ash out at coal strip is actually coming out of what are called scrubbers. And the scrubbers are put into the smokestacks. And what they do is they keep toxins from getting into the air. But they've got to go somewhere.
And they go into the ash.
Right.
Scrubbers,
Right.
they end up in the ash pond.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of the air, it's in your groundwater.
You know, and I think about all of these huge processes we have for trying to, well, one, create electricity from burning coal, but then to try to control the toxicity of it through emissions, and then try to control the toxicity from the coal ash, when we could really be investing all of that energy and ingenuity into a system that's going to protect our health and the environment. And, you know, America has a long history of ingenuity and world influence, and if we're going to really get on the path of a clean energy future, it's time to stop putting energy into trying to fix a problem that's inherently problematic. Let's quit putting the Band-Aid on it and get to something better.
Right, get something better, put the energy. Well, Mike, I should have mentioned this earlier. We've been experimenting with putting this program live on Ustream, and it has been going out live on Ustream. So perhaps we can figure out a way to get the link to you, so you just go to ustream.com. Of course, we've got the thing on the screen here, but you can't see it. But it's ustream.tv/a-growing-concern. Pretty easy to remember. Maybe you can be checking this out. It's also saved, so it can be viewed afterwards as well. And I really thank you for your contribution to the program. We're down to about a little over, probably less than 7 minutes here. Do you have any final words for the viewing audience here?
If there's one thing you can do that's going to make a difference, it's for people living in areas where electricity is generated. It would be to submit comments on these EPA rulemaking. We really need your support. We need it from the consumer end as much as we need it from the people who are getting impacted. Because as you can imagine, these plants are in places where not a lot of people live.
Right.
And they like it that way.
Of course.
So,
yes.
You know, we need your help on this, Portland. Please submit comments.
All right. Well, that makes a lot of sense, because the like you say, where they're getting this coal, and a lot of places where they're burning it, there's not the population that's around here.
That's right.
And the population doesn't matter any less than the ones here, so let's remember to keep those communities in mind too.
All right. Well, Mike, I appreciate the call. If there's anything else you've got to say, we've got a few minutes left. I think that encouraging people to call up, or to write the letters, I should say, it's sierraclub.org/coalash is the website that we've got up on the screen a few times, so people can write that down and respond to that. And we'll encourage them to do a little research as well, and find out a little bit more about this.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you for calling.
Thanks, Mike. Keep fighting the good fight out there.
All right.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Well, you know, it's one thing about these kind of programs is you always find out that things are a lot worse than you thought. But then you also find out there's a lot more things you can do than you thought.
That's right, too. Glass half full. Glass half full.
That's right. So we got about, I think, 6 minutes or so left. And unless you've got some things we can go directly right to, we might open up the phones and see if the folks out there want to call up and do some comments. And sometimes the folks out there can bring up points and comments that really add to the conversation quite often, and I try to add that component to the program if we can.
Sure.
But what he was saying about coal ash, I knew we were going to talk about this, and I kind of knew what it was, but I didn't realize that the scrubbers are taking what could go into the air, which is great, and putting it into the coal ash, which is going into the water.
Yeah, that's right. It's just there's no way to make coal clean, and the idea that there's such a thing as clean coal is the biggest scam out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I was thinking this was the Clean Coal campaign, but it's the Beyond
Coal. Glass half full, Jim. Beyond coal. All the wonderful opportunities we have ahead of us.
There's so many places we can go beyond coal. I think we have a call. Okay, first caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'd like to comment about some of the comments made by your guests about PGE's proposals and counter-proposals for this Boardman plant, and it gives me a foreboding sense of deja vu with Trojan, nuclear power plant, and how PGE was drugged kicking and screaming all the way, spending millions of dollars to save Trojan, only to shut it down after they have already spent those millions of dollars. And as a electric ratepayer for PGE, I really don't see any positive outcome dealing with PGE. I believe, it's my own belief, that they should be forced to shut it down. Thank you.
All right, and as if, good to hear your voice again there. Yeah. And as if the caller will remember that PGE also went down to Salem and backhanded deals tried to get profits that they lost from having to shut that down too, as well.
And that's, and that's one of the most egregious parts of this whole process, is that this plant needs $500 million worth of pollution upgrades just to bring it up to modern standards. It has nothing to do with carbon or anything, just to clean it up to modern standards for today. $500 million, and they want us to pay for it. They want the ratepayers to pay for it. And that's what they're asking from the Public Utilities Commission, is that we please approve that ratepayers sink in $500 million into a dirty, dangerous, outdated coal plant when we have no certainty that that plant would be able to run for the decades into the future that they claim it would.
Do either one of you know how much money the PGE is putting into R&R, into sustainable?
I don't know.
I don't know the details on that, but we know they're also sinking a lot of money into lobbying in D.C. and lobbying at the state and trying to keep that plant running as soon as possible. So instead of sinking money into trying to get around the rules, we're hoping that PGE will actually put some money into building a future beyond what we have at Boardman now. So,
and the state has what is called a renewable portfolio standard, and that means that utilities that operate in the state have to have a certain amount of their electricity coming from renewables. Our goals are 15% by 2015 and 25% by 2025, and so PGE is investing in renewables to meet that goal. But like your caller said, they need to be forced to do it. They need state laws in order to do it.
And another thing to remember is the sustainable energy is usually going to be on the central or eastern part of the state, and then they're going to need an energy corridor. So PGE is trying to get an energy corridor coming from somewhere in the Boardman area where a lot of these
down to Salem
and on down through I forget where exactly it's going, but it's going through the National Forest and through and through the Warm Springs Reservation, and that's something to PGE. They're working on multiple fronts here.
It's true. It's true. For the new green energy future, there are going to be some tough decisions made. There are people out there that don't like wind farms for the view blight. And so there are going to be some tough decisions made, and everybody's not going to always agree. But we, for our point of view, if proper siting is key. You do things in the right way, even if it's renewable energy. You properly site it just the way you would properly site anything, and then there's a real future in distributed energy, which is producing energy right here in the city. Rooftop solar is a really great example of that, and so the more that we can generate it close to home, the less we need for the energy corridors.
Decentralize it. So we're down to about a minute, so we've got this one graphic we could put up for the coal ash if we want to do that real quick, and that was one thing we wanted folks to know about. And then the other one was the September 21st. Oh boy, that was quick. There you go. So the DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, public hearing in Portland, Tuesday, September 21st at 6 p.m. And there's the address right there, and we'll make sure to mention that, and we'll get that up on Indie Media as well. We'll get 800 people down there.
Yeah, excellent. We hope that you'll be part of the 800.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll keep folks updated on this in the future. We're down to about 25 seconds. I want to thank the crew for standing behind the cameras and doing the work in the control room.
Appreciate all your work.
This is all volunteer, and they may not know a lot about the issue, but well, we hope we taught them a little bit about it. And you taught me a lot as well. This is always a learning experience for me. So I want to thank folks for tuning in, and we'll be back next week. Good night for now.
Good night.
Thank you, Jim.